Marcus Rivera had spent 15 years perfecting the art of invisible excellence. As head of custodial services at Blackstone Industries, he arrived at 4 a.m. every morning, 3 hours before the first executive would stride through the marble lobby in their $1,000 shoes. His work was flawless, his presence unnoticed, and his English impeccable despite the accent that still colored his words after 2 decades in America. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. What none of those executives knew was that Marcus spoke 4 languages fluently, held a master's degree in electrical engineering from Universidad Nacional in Colombia, and had once designed power grids for entire cities. But when your work visa expires and your wife dies in childbirth, leaving you with a newborn daughter and mountains of medical debt, pride becomes a luxury you can't afford. So Marcus mopped floors and emptied trash cans and saved every penny for his daughter Sofia, because some dreams are worth any sacrifice. The morning that would change everything started like any other. Marcus finished polishing the conference room table on the 42nd floor, the same table where Blackstone's board would gather in 6 hours to decide the fate of a billion-dollar renewable energy project in Germany. He was adjusting the leather chairs when he heard it. A small voice speaking rapid German, echoing from the executive washroom. What happens when a man who spent years being invisible suddenly becomes the only person in a room full of millionaires who can understand what matters most? 2 years earlier, Marcus Rivera had been a different man entirely. He'd worn pressed white shirts to his job as senior electrical engineer at Bogotá's largest infrastructure firm, came home each evening to Elena's warm smile and the smell of arepa con queso filling their small apartment. Elena had been 7 months pregnant when they'd received the invitation to emigrate, a work visa opportunity that promised a better future for their growing family in America. The visa application process had taken 8 months, during which Elena's belly had grown round and their excitement had built with each passing week. They'd practiced English together in the evenings, Elena's hand resting on her stomach as she repeated phrases she'd need at the hospital. "The baby is coming," she'd say, laughing at her pronunciation. "Please help me." Neither of them had imagined how prophetic those words would become. Marcus had found temporary work with Blackstone Industries' maintenance department, while waiting for his engineering credentials to be recognized by American institutions. The pay was a fraction of what he'd earned in Colombia, but it included health insurance and the promise of stability while they established their new life. Elena had been optimistic about everything, decorating their tiny apartment with second-hand furniture and planning a nursery in what had once been a storage closet. The complications had started during what should have been a routine checkup. Elena's blood pressure had spiked dangerously high, and the doctor had ordered immediate bed rest. For 3 weeks, Marcus had juggled his custodial shifts with caring for Elena, bringing her meals in bed and reading to their unborn daughter in a mixture of Spanish and the English they were still learning together. The emergency had come at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night in November. Elena had awakened with pain that sent them rushing to Mercy General Hospital, where a team of doctors had delivered their daughter by emergency cesarean section. Sofia had arrived 2 months early, weighing barely 4 pounds, her tiny lungs struggling to draw breath in a world she wasn't quite ready for. Elena had held their daughter for exactly 17 minutes before the complications that would steal her from them both had begun. Internal bleeding that couldn't be stopped, organs shutting down one by one. The most beautiful woman Marcus had ever known fading away, even as their daughter fought for life in an incubator 3 floors above the room where he'd promised Elena that everything would be fine. The funeral had cost $12,000 they didn't have. The hospital bills had reached $340,000, before insurance adjustments brought the total down to a still-crushing $89,000. Sofia had spent her first 3 months of life in the neonatal intensive care unit, her tiny body connected to machines that kept her breathing, while Marcus worked double shifts to pay for care that no parent should have to worry about affording. Marcus had made promises at Elena's graveside, standing in the cold December rain with Sofia bundled in his arms, speaking words in Spanish that felt more natural for such sacred commitments. He'd promised to be both mother and father to their daughter, to give her every opportunity Elena had dreamed of providing, to raise her bilingual and proud of both her Colombian heritage and her American future. Keeping those promises had required sacrifices that reshaped every aspect of his identity. The engineering credentials took 2 years and $15,000 in certification fees to transfer to American standards. By the time Sofia was walking, Marcus had realized that custodial work at Blackstone provided more stability than job hunting in a competitive field, where his accent marked him as foreign, and his gap in employment raised questions he couldn't answer without revealing vulnerabilities that employers might use against him. The apartment on Riverside Drive had paper-thin walls and neighbors who complained when Sofia cried during her teething months. Marcus had learned to comfort her in whispers, walking the narrow hallway at 3 a.m. while humming Colombian lullabies Elena had sung during her pregnancy. The pediatrician bills, the daycare costs, and the debt payments had left little room for anything beyond basic survival, but Sofia had thrived despite their circumstances. At 4 years old, Sofia spoke Spanish and English with equal fluency, switching between languages depending on her mood and her audience. She'd inherited Elena's quick smile and Marcus's analytical mind, asking questions about everything she observed and remembering details that amazed the daycare teachers who saw her intelligence despite the secondhand clothes and generic brand supplies her father could afford. Marcus had been working at Blackstone for 18 months when he'd first noticed the framed photograph on CEO Jonathan Blackstone's desk, a little girl with blonde curls and a gap-toothed grin, probably around Sofia's age, standing beside a woman who shared Blackstone's angular features and confident posture. The executive floors were full of family photographs, reminders that the people who made million-dollar decisions were also parents who worried about school plays and soccer practices. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus that he spent his days cleaning the offices of people who earned more in bonuses than he would see in a lifetime, while his own daughter attended a daycare that smelled like industrial disinfectant and served lunch from institutional-sized cans. But the work was honest, and the schedule was predictable. And Sofia had health insurance that covered her pediatric visits and the specialists who monitored her early development. Blackstone Industries specialized in renewable energy projects across 3 continents, building solar farms and wind installations that powered entire regions while generating profits that funded expansion into new markets. Marcus had read every piece of literature in the company lobby, understanding the technical specifications and environmental impact assessments with the expertise he'd developed during his years designing power grids in Colombia. The German project had been discussed in whispered conversations among the executive assistants, a massive solar installation in Bavaria that would establish Blackstone's presence in European markets while demonstrating American leadership in sustainable technology. The contract negotiations had been ongoing for 18 months, involving cultural protocols and language barriers that had challenged even Blackstone's international development team. Marcus had overheard enough conversations to understand that the German partners were traditional in their business practices, preferring face-to-face negotiations and personal relationships over conference calls and email chains. The Blackstone team had hired translators and cultural consultants, but the project had stalled repeatedly over communication issues that went beyond simple language differences into cultural nuances that outsiders struggled to navigate. The morning shift began at 4 a.m. with inventory and supply organization in the basement storage rooms that most employees never saw. Marcus worked alone during these early hours, listening to Colombian radio on earbuds while organizing cleaning supplies and reviewing the daily schedule that determined which floors required attention and which executive offices needed detailed cleaning. The building was different in the pre-dawn hours, stripped of the urgency and ego that filled the daytime atmosphere with competitive energy. Marcus could work methodically through his tasks while listening to news from Bogotá and music that reminded him of evenings with Elena when their biggest concern had been choosing names for the baby who would change everything about their lives. By 6 a.m., Marcus had cleaned the lobby, the executive conference rooms, and the first 15 floors of office space. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor was always silent, carrying him into a world of leather furniture and original artwork that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Jonathan Blackstone's corner office commanded views of the city skyline that stretched to the mountains beyond, a daily reminder of power and perspective that came with controlling billion-dollar enterprises. The executive bathroom connected to Blackstone's office was larger than the apartment bedroom Marcus shared with Sofia, featuring marble countertops and fixtures that probably cost more than Marcus earned in 6 months. It was while restocking towels in this bathroom that Marcus first heard the voice that would change everything about his understanding of invisibility, opportunity, and the difference between being unnoticed and being underestimated. The voice belonged to a child, speaking rapid German with the fluency of someone who'd learned the language from native speakers. The words were muffled by the bathroom door, but Marcus could distinguish enough to understand that someone young and upset was expressing frustration about adults who didn't listen and promises that hadn't been kept. Marcus had paused in his towel arrangement, his engineering mind automatically translating the German phrases while his father's heart recognized the tone of a child who felt unheard by the adults responsible for her care. The voice belonged to a girl, probably around Sofia's age, speaking with the grammatical precision that suggested formal education rather than casual exposure to the language. The conference room adjacent to the bathroom had been set up the previous evening for the morning's board meeting about the German renewable energy project. Marcus had arranged the leather chairs and polished the mahogany table while thinking about the irony of cleaning rooms where decisions were made about projects he understood better than most of the executives who would occupy those chairs. German had been Marcus's third language, learned during his engineering studies when technical specifications required familiarity with European standards and protocols. Elena had teased him about his accent, but his comprehension was flawless, and his technical vocabulary was extensive enough to understand complex engineering discussions without difficulty. The child's voice had grown more frustrated, the German words coming faster as she apparently tried to communicate with someone who either didn't understand the language or wasn't paying adequate attention to her concerns. Marcus had recognized, preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Phrases about time and promises and the importance of keeping commitments, concepts that any 4-year-old might struggle to articulate but this child was expressing with remarkable sophistication. Marcus had finished his bathroom duties while listening to the one-sided conversation, piecing together fragments that suggested the child was trying to communicate something important to adults who were either unable or unwilling to understand her message. The frustration in her voice had reminded him of Sofia's tears when daycare teachers didn't understand her Spanish explanations for playground conflicts or homework confusion. The executive floor had specific security protocols that Marcus had been trained to follow carefully. Custodial staff were expected to complete their duties efficiently, while maintaining discretion about conversations and documents they might encounter during their work. Marcus had signed confidentiality agreements and understood that his continued employment depended on professional behavior that respected executive privacy, but the child's voice had carried a distress that transcended professional protocols. The universal sound of a young person who needed help communicating something important to adults who had the power to help but lacked the ability to understand. Marcus had hesitated outside the bathroom door, caught between professional obligations and parental instincts that recognized when a child's frustration was reaching dangerous levels. The German phrases had become more complex, suggesting that this wasn't a casual conversation but an attempt to communicate specific information about timing and importance and consequences that adults needed to understand. Marcus had distinguished enough words to recognize that the child was discussing the morning's board meeting and expressing concerns about decisions that would affect people she cared about. The door to Blackstone's office had been slightly ajar, allowing Marcus to see a portion of the room where a small figure in a navy blue dress sat in one of the leather chairs, speaking earnestly to someone outside Marcus's line of sight. The child's blonde curls and delicate features matched the photograph on Blackstone's desk, confirming that this was Jonathan Blackstone's daughter, attempting to communicate something urgent in a language that apparently no one else in the office understood. Marcus had completed his assigned cleaning duties on the executive floor by 6:45 a.m., 15 minutes ahead of his usual schedule. The German conversation had continued intermittently, with periods of silence suggesting that the child was waiting for responses that either didn't come or didn't satisfy her concerns about whatever issue was causing her distress. The building's early morning routine included security rounds and system checks that brought guards through the executive floors between 7 and 7:30 a.m. Marcus had timed his departure to avoid encounters that might raise questions about his presence near executive offices during conversations that were clearly private family matters rather than business discussions. The elevator ride to the basement storage rooms had given Marcus 20 floors of thinking time about professional boundaries, parental empathy, and the complex ethics of potentially helpful intervention versus respectful non-involvement. His custodial position depended on invisibility and discretion, qualities that had protected his employment for 18 months while he'd built the stability that Sofia needed for her continued development. But the child's voice had carried genuine distress about something connected to the morning's board meeting, a billion-dollar decision that would affect thousands of employees and determine Blackstone Industries' future in European markets. Marcus had understood enough German to recognize that the conversation involved time-sensitive information that might be crucial for the decisions that would be made in the conference room he'd prepared just hours earlier. The basement storage room had fluorescent lighting that flickered intermittently and concrete walls that amplified every sound from the heating system and elevator machinery. Marcus had organized his cleaning supplies while processing the fragments of German conversation he'd overheard, trying to determine whether professional obligation required reporting the incident to security or whether discretion demanded complete silence about private family matters. Sofia's daycare pickup was scheduled for 5:30 p.m., giving Marcus 11 hours to complete his custodial duties while wrestling with questions about intervention, opportunity, and the difference between being helpful and being intrusive. The German project represented exactly the kind of renewable energy work that had originally drawn Marcus to electrical engineering, the intersection of technical expertise and environmental responsibility that could power entire regions while reducing carbon emissions. The morning newspaper had included a brief article about Blackstone Industries' German negotiations, mentioning cultural challenges and communication difficulties that had delayed contract finalization for over 18 months. The reporter had speculated that failure to secure the German partnership might affect Blackstone's expansion plans and potentially impact employment for hundreds of workers whose jobs depended on international project success. Marcus had folded the newspaper carefully while considering the irony that a custodial worker might possess language skills that could resolve communication problems affecting billion-dollar negotiations and hundreds of employment futures. But offering assistance would require revealing capabilities that might raise questions about his background and qualifications that could complicate his carefully maintained position as an invisible but reliable employee. The 7 a.m. shift change brought 20 additional custodial workers to the building, along with kitchen staff who prepared executive dining services and security personnel who monitored access to sensitive floors and offices. Marcus had exchanged brief greetings with colleagues who shared his early morning schedule, maintaining the professional relationships that made his work environment pleasant without developing friendships that might require explanations about his educational background or engineering expertise. The executive floor had emptied of family voices by 8 a.m., suggesting that Blackstone's daughter had either resolved her communication concerns or had been taken elsewhere for childcare while her father prepared for the board meeting that would determine his company's international expansion strategy. Marcus had returned to the 42nd floor to complete window cleaning duties, working methodically through offices that would soon fill with executives whose decisions affected thousands of lives. The conference room preparation had been perfect, with leather chairs positioned precisely around a mahogany table that reflected the morning sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Marcus had arranged water glasses and notepads with the attention to detail that had characterized his engineering work, ensuring that every element supported the important decisions that would be made in this space. The German contract documents had been stacked neatly at each place setting, their covers embossed with logos representing partnerships that could generate billions in revenue while advancing renewable energy technology across European markets. Marcus had recognized technical specifications and environmental impact data that aligned perfectly with projects he'd designed during his years in Colombia, confirmation that his expertise remained relevant despite his current employment circumstances. The morning had proceeded according to Marcus's established routine, with custodial duties completed efficiently, while his mind processed the ethical implications of possessing information that might benefit his employer while revealing capabilities that could complicate his employment security. The child's distressed German had continued echoing in his memory, a reminder that sometimes the most important communications happened in languages that powerful people didn't understand. By 9 a.m., Marcus had completed his morning duties and returned to the basement storage areas where he would spend the next hour organizing supplies and preparing equipment for afternoon cleaning schedules. The building had filled with the usual sounds of corporate activity, elevator bells, and telephone conversations, and the confident footsteps of people whose decisions shaped markets and determined futures. The German board meeting was scheduled to begin at 10 a.m. in the conference room that Marcus had prepared with meticulous attention to detail. Through the building's internal communication system, Marcus could hear fragments of conversation suggesting that final preparations were underway for negotiations that had been 18 months in development and carried implications that extended far beyond Blackstone Industries' quarterly profits. The basement storage room had become Marcus's refuge during the morning hours, when his mind wrestled with questions about opportunity, obligation, and the complex calculations that determined when invisible people should risk visibility for purposes that might benefit others. Elena had always said that God placed people in specific positions at crucial moments, for reasons that became clear only in retrospect. Marcus had been checking inventory supplies when the building's intercom crackled with an announcement that would transform every assumption about invisibility, expertise, and the difference between being unnoticed and being essential. The voice belonged to Jonathan Blackstone himself, speaking with the urgent tone of someone facing an unexpected crisis that threatened carefully laid plans. All department heads report to conference room A immediately. We have a situation that requires immediate attention and creative problem solving. This is not a drill. The announcement had been repeated twice, suggesting that the German board meeting had encountered complications that demanded company-wide response and innovative solutions that extended beyond the expertise of the executives who had been confident about their negotiation strategies. Marcus had paused in his inventory work, understanding that situations requiring immediate attention in corporate environments usually meant that careful plans had collided with unexpected realities that threatened project success and financial stability. The urgency in Blackstone's voice had suggested that the German negotiations had reached a crisis point that could determine the company's future in international markets. The basement storage room had provided acoustic isolation from the executive floor activities, but Marcus could hear increased foot traffic and urgent conversations that indicated widespread response to whatever crisis had interrupted the German board meeting. The building's internal energy had shifted from routine corporate confidence to emergency problem-solving mode that engaged employees at every level of the organizational hierarchy. Marcus had completed his morning duties with the mechanical precision that characterized his approach to all responsibilities, but his mind had remained focused on the German phrases he'd overheard from Blackstone's daughter and the potential connection between a child's frustrated communication attempts and a billion-dollar negotiation that had apparently encountered unexpected difficulties. The cleaning cart organization had provided familiar rhythm, while Marcus considered the mathematics of intervention, the probability that his language skills might address whatever crisis had prompted Blackstone's company-wide emergency announcement. Engineering training had taught him to analyze problems systematically, identifying variables and potential solutions while calculating risks and benefits of different approaches. Sofia's photograph, taped inside his supply cart, had reminded Marcus that every decision carried implications for the most important person in his life. Employment stability had been hard-won and carefully maintained, providing the foundation for Sofia's health insurance and educational opportunities that would determine her future possibilities. Risking that stability required compelling reasons that justified potential consequences, but Elena's voice had whispered in his memory, reminding him that some opportunities arrived disguised as problems, that helping others sometimes created pathways that couldn't be discovered through careful planning and risk avoidance. The German child's distressed voice had suggested information that might be crucial for resolving whatever crisis had interrupted billion-dollar negotiations and threatened hundreds of employment futures. The 9:30 a.m. announcement had clarified the nature of the emergency that had disrupted Blackstone Industries, German negotiations, and created company-wide urgency about finding solutions that could salvage 18 months of careful planning and preserve international expansion opportunities that would determine the company's competitive future. We have encountered an unexpected communication barrier that threatens our German renewable energy partnership. The situation requires immediate linguistic expertise and cultural understanding that may not be available through our usual consulting channels. All employees with relevant language skills or international experience are requested to contact executive administration immediately. The announcement had been repeated 3 times, with increasing urgency that suggested time-sensitive negotiations were at stake and conventional solutions had proven inadequate for resolving the communication crisis. Marcus had stood in the basement storage room, surrounded by cleaning supplies and maintenance equipment, while processing the realization that his carefully maintained invisibility had positioned him at the intersection of crisis and opportunity in ways that neither he nor his employers could have anticipated. The German phrases from Blackstone's daughter had suddenly gained new significance, suggesting that the child had been attempting to communicate information that adults needed to understand for successful negotiations with partners whose language and cultural expectations had apparently created barriers that traditional business approaches couldn't overcome. Marcus had faced the decision that would determine not only his own future, but potentially the futures of hundreds of colleagues whose employment security depended on Blackstone Industries. Success in international markets. The choice between continued invisibility and potentially transformative visibility carried implications that extended far beyond personal comfort zones into questions about purpose, opportunity, and the responsibilities that came with possessing skills that others needed desperately. Elena's memory had provided guidance that transcended practical calculations about job security and professional risk management. "Mijo," she had always said, "God doesn't give us gifts to keep hidden. He gives them to us so we can help others when they need us most." The basement storage room had suddenly felt like the foundation from which Marcus would build, either continued anonymity or a completely different future that honored both his capabilities and his obligations to the people who had trusted him with opportunities that could change everything. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt different this time, carrying Marcus toward a decision that would either validate Elena's faith in divine timing or expose him to consequences that could destroy the careful stability he'd built around Sofia's needs. His reflection in the polished elevator doors showed a man in custodial uniform approaching a boardroom full of executives who earned more in quarterly bonuses than he would see in a decade of honest work. The executive floor buzzed with unprecedented activity as department heads hurried between offices, their usual corporate confidence replaced by the bright, urgent energy that accompanied crisis management. Marcus recognized the signs from his engineering days when power grid failures required immediate solutions that drew expertise from unexpected sources and demanded innovation that couldn't wait for conventional protocols. Jonathan Blackstone's assistant, Patricia Morrison, occupied a desk outside the CEO's office that commanded views of both the conference room and the elevator bank. She'd been fielding telephone calls and managing crisis communications with the professional calm that had made her indispensable during 18 years of corporate emergencies. Her recognition of Marcus was limited to polite nods during his morning cleaning routine, but today she looked up with the desperate attention of someone hoping for solutions from any available source. Marcus approached her desk with the measured pace of someone who'd spent months perfecting the art of appearing neither rushed nor hesitant in environments where his presence required justification. The German project documents were visible on Patricia's computer screen, their technical specifications and environmental impact assessments familiar territory for someone who'd designed renewable energy systems for 3 different countries. "Excuse me, Miss Morrison. I heard the announcement about needing German language assistance. I speak fluent German and have experience with renewable energy projects. Would this be helpful for the current situation?" Marcus spoke with the careful pronunciation he'd developed to minimize his accent during professional communications, his words carrying confidence that surprised Patricia enough to pause her telephone conversation. Patricia's expression shifted from polite dismissal to sharp attention as she processed Marcus's offer and the implications of linguistic expertise appearing from an unexpected source. Her experience managing corporate crises had taught her to evaluate solutions based on effectiveness rather than conventional expectations about where help might originate. "You speak German? Fluently?" Patricia's question carried the urgency of someone who'd spent the morning contacting translation services and discovering that specialized technical vocabulary required expertise that wasn't available through standard language consulting firms. The German partners had apparently introduced contract modifications that involved cultural protocols and technical specifications that traditional translators couldn't navigate effectively. Marcus confirmed his language capabilities while explaining his educational background in terms that established credibility without revealing the full extent of his overqualification for custodial work. His engineering degree and renewable energy experience had relevance that extended beyond language skills into technical expertise that might address whatever complications had disrupted the morning's negotiations. Patricia's telephone call to Jonathan Blackstone lasted 30 seconds, during which Marcus could hear fragments of conversation suggesting that the CEO was desperate enough to consider unconventional sources of assistance for problems that threatened partnerships worth hundreds of millions in revenue. The boardroom crisis had apparently escalated beyond communication difficulties into cultural misunderstandings that required insight into German business protocols and technical standards. "Mr. Blackstone will see you immediately," Patricia announced, her tone carrying relief that surprised Marcus with its intensity. The CEO's desperation was apparently genuine enough to override conventional hierarchies and consider help from sources that might have been dismissed under normal circumstances. Crisis management often revealed organizational flexibility that prosperity concealed. The walk to Jonathan Blackstone's office covered 50 feet of marble flooring that Marcus had polished countless times while invisible to the powerful man, who now needed his expertise for problems that conventional resources couldn't solve. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus that 18 months of perfect custodial work had positioned him for an opportunity that his engineering background had prepared him to handle. Jonathan Blackstone stood behind his massive oak desk with the posture of someone accustomed to commanding rooms full of executives who implemented his vision across multiple continents. At 52, he carried the confident bearing that came from building a billion-dollar company through strategic decisions and calculated risks that had consistently generated profits for shareholders and employment for thousands of workers. But today, Blackstone's confidence was shadowed by the stress of watching 18 months of careful negotiations collapse due to communication barriers that had revealed gaps in his organization's international capabilities. The German renewable energy project represented more than business expansion. It symbolized Blackstone Industries' evolution into a global leader in sustainable technology that could influence environmental policy across multiple nations. Marcus, isn't it? Patricia says you speak German and have renewable energy experience. We have a situation that requires immediate assistance, and conventional solutions aren't available. Blackstone's directness reflected the urgency of negotiations that had stalled due to cultural misunderstandings and technical specifications that required expertise in both language and engineering. The conference room contained 12 executives whose combined salaries could fund entire municipal budgets, but their expensive educations and international business experience had proven inadequate for navigating the cultural protocols that German partners required for billion-dollar partnerships. The oak table was covered with contract documents, technical specifications, and cultural consulting reports that had failed to bridge communication gaps that threatened project success. Marcus entered the boardroom with the measured confidence he developed during presentations to municipal engineers and environmental agencies in Colombia. The executives' expressions ranged from skeptical curiosity to desperate hope, their usual corporate hierarchy temporarily suspended by crisis management that prioritized solutions over conventional organizational structures. Dr. Klaus Weber and his delegation occupied one side of the conference table with the formal bearing that characterized German business culture. Their technical expertise and environmental commitment were evident in questions that probed deeply into engineering specifications and long-term sustainability commitments that went beyond profit projections into genuine environmental stewardship. The translation equipment had been providing literal conversions of German phrases without capturing cultural nuances and technical implications that required understanding of both engineering principles and German business protocols. Marcus recognized immediately that the communication breakdown involved more than language barriers, extending into cultural expectations about thoroughness and precision that American business practices hadn't adequately addressed. Dr. Weber, guten Morgen. Ich verstehe, dass es Bedenken bezüglich der technischen Spezifikationen und der langfristigen Nachhaltigkeitsverpflichtungen gibt. Marcus's German carried the technical precision that Dr. Weber had been seeking throughout 18 months of negotiations, immediately capturing the attention of delegates who'd grown frustrated with inadequate translations and superficial responses to complex technical questions. The German delegation's reaction was immediate and visible, their posture shifting from polite skepticism to engaged attention, as Marcus demonstrated fluency that went beyond conversational ability into technical expertise that addressed their specific concerns about engineering standards and environmental impact assessments. Dr. Weber responded with rapid German that tested Marcus's comprehension of complex technical vocabulary related to power grid integration and environmental protection protocols. The questions involved carbon footprint calculations and efficiency standards that required engineering knowledge rather than simple language translation, confirming that the communication crisis had technical dimensions that traditional translators couldn't navigate. Marcus answered each question with the precision that his engineering education had developed, explaining power conversion efficiencies and grid integration protocols in German that satisfied Dr. Weber's requirements for technical accuracy and environmental commitment. The boardroom atmosphere shifted perceptibly as executives realized that their custodial employee possessed expertise that their million-dollar consulting team had been unable to provide. The primary concerns involved long-term maintenance protocols and local environmental impact mitigation. Marcus explained to Blackstone while continuing to address Dr. Weber's technical questions in fluent German. The conversation revealed that German partners required assurances about operational sustainability that went beyond profit projections into genuine commitment to environmental stewardship and community benefit. Jonathan Blackstone listened with growing amazement as his custodial employee navigated technical discussions that had stymied international business consultants and engineering firms that specialized in renewable energy partnerships. The morning's crisis was transforming into an opportunity that no one could have anticipated when conventional solutions had proven inadequate. The German delegation's questions became increasingly detailed, probing technical specifications and environmental commitments that Marcus addressed with expertise that impressed both the German engineers and the American executives who were witnessing unprecedented access to negotiations that had been stalled for over a year. Sie haben tatsächlich Erfahrung mit Netzsystemen? Das ist beeindruckend. Können Sie die Effizienzberechnungen für die Hauptverteilungsknoten erklären? Dr. Weber's question about power distribution efficiency required engineering knowledge that went far beyond language translation into technical expertise that few people possessed. Marcus responded with detailed explanations of power distribution calculations and grid integration protocols, drawing diagrams on the whiteboard that demonstrated his understanding of electrical engineering principles that applied directly to the proposed German renewable energy installation. His explanation satisfied Dr. Weber's technical requirements while revealing capabilities that transformed him from custodial worker to essential team member. The boardroom conversation continued for 2 hours, with Marcus serving as both translator and technical consultant for negotiations that had been impossible without his unique combination of language skills and engineering expertise. The German delegates' satisfaction was evident in their increasingly collaborative tone and specific questions about implementation timelines and operational protocols. The German team is ready to proceed with contract finalization, Marcus reported to Blackstone after extensive discussions that had resolved technical concerns and cultural protocols that had been barriers for 18 months. The breakthrough had been achieved through expertise that existed within Blackstone Industries, but had been invisible due to organizational assumptions about employee capabilities. Dr. Weber's final comments addressed the partnership's potential for expansion into additional European markets, opportunities that could multiply the project's value while establishing Blackstone Industries as a leader in international renewable energy development. The morning's crisis had evolved into unprecedented opportunity that exceeded original negotiation objectives. Marcus, we need to discuss your role in this company immediately. Blackstone announced as the German delegation departed with signed contracts and implementation timelines that would generate revenue and employment opportunities that had seemed impossible when the morning began. The custodial uniform that Marcus wore had become irrelevant to his demonstrated value as both technical expert and cultural bridge. The executive team's reaction to Marcus's transformation from invisible employee to essential contributor revealed organizational assumptions that had limited their understanding of human resources and talent utilization. Several executives approached Marcus with questions about his background and availability for additional consulting work that could support expanding international operations. Patricia Morrison had been documenting the morning's events with the systematic attention that corporate communications required for stakeholder reporting and media management. The story of custodial employees saving billion-dollar negotiations would require careful presentation that emphasized organizational flexibility and talent recognition rather than management oversight that had failed to identify valuable expertise. The German contract signature represented more than business success. It symbolized organizational evolution that could influence how Blackstone Industries identified and utilized employee capabilities that extended beyond job descriptions and conventional hierarchies. Marcus's contribution had revealed gaps in talent assessment that could be addressed through more comprehensive employee evaluation and development programs. We need to discuss compensation adjustment and role redefinition that reflects your actual capabilities and contributions to this organization. Blackstone continued, his tone carrying recognition that traditional employment categories had proven inadequate for capturing employee value and organizational potential. The morning's transformation had implications that extended beyond Marcus's individual circumstances into questions about organizational culture and talent utilization that could affect how the company approached human resources and employee development across all departments and functional areas. Marcus's visibility had shifted from complete invisibility to central importance in ways that created both opportunities and challenges for someone who had carefully maintained low-profile employment for Sofia's security and stability. The success of his intervention had demonstrated capabilities that could support career advancement, while potentially creating expectations that might complicate his primary focus on single parenting. The boardroom conversation about Marcus's future role revealed executive recognition that his value extended beyond language skills into technical expertise and cultural understanding that could support expanding international operations in renewable energy markets across multiple continents. The German success had created precedent for similar partnerships that could benefit from his unique combination of capabilities. But the discussion also revealed assumptions about career ambition and professional development that might not align with Marcus's priorities as a single father, whose primary concerns involved Sofia's stability and security, rather than corporate advancement that could complicate family obligations and work-life balance requirements. "I appreciate the recognition and the opportunities you're discussing," Marcus responded carefully, "but I need to consider how any role changes would affect my daughter's care and my ability to maintain the stability she needs for her development. My family obligations take priority over career advancement." Blackstone's expression revealed surprise at Marcus's response, perhaps expecting more enthusiasm for opportunities that most employees would embrace without hesitation. The executive team's reaction suggested limited understanding of single-parenting challenges and the calculations that determined employment decisions when children's needs took precedence over professional ambition. "We can certainly accommodate family obligations in any role restructuring," Blackstone assured him, though his tone suggested incomplete understanding of single-parenting complexities and the ways that career changes could affect childcare logistics and financial stability that couldn't be easily adjusted. The German contract success had created momentum for discussions about Marcus's future with Blackstone Industries, but the afternoon would bring revelations about his daughter's situation that would transform everyone's understanding of coincidence, connection, and the ways that seemingly separate problems sometimes shared unexpected solutions. The executive floor's afternoon routine included department briefings and strategy sessions that incorporated the morning's German success into broader planning for international expansion and organizational development. Marcus had returned to his custodial duties, but the atmosphere around his work had shifted dramatically as executives and administrative staff processed the implications of discovering essential expertise in unexpected places. Patricia Morrison approached Marcus during his afternoon cleaning routine, with information that would reveal new dimensions to the morning's success and create connections that no one could have anticipated when crisis management had brought invisible expertise into boardroom visibility. "Marcus, there's something you should know about this morning's situation," Patricia began, her tone carrying significance that suggested additional complexity to events that had already transformed assumptions about employee capabilities and organizational resources. The information Patricia shared would reveal that the German negotiation crisis had personal dimensions that connected directly to the distressed child's voice Marcus had heard speaking German in Blackstone's office, creating coincidences that suggested deeper purpose behind the morning's convergence of crisis and expertise. Jonathan Blackstone's daughter had been trying to communicate crucial information about the German partners, cultural expectations, and technical concerns, information she'd acquired through her German nanny's connections to Dr. Weber's family and their involvement in renewable energy advocacy throughout Bavaria. The child had understood from conversations with her nanny that the German delegation required assurances about environmental commitment and community benefit that went beyond profit projections, information that could have resolved negotiations weeks earlier if adults had possessed the language skills necessary to understand her frustrated attempts at communication. Marcus's intervention had solved not only the immediate translation crisis, but had also validated the concerns that Blackstone's daughter had been unable to communicate effectively to adults who lacked German language capabilities. The morning's success represented convergence of expertise, opportunity, and information that had been available within the organization but hadn't been accessible due to communication barriers. "She's been upset for weeks about the German negotiations," Patricia explained. "Her nanny is from Bavaria and has connections to environmental groups that Dr. Weber supports. Emma has been trying to tell her father what the German partners really want, but no one could understand her explanations." The revelation that Jonathan Blackstone's daughter possessed information crucial for billion-dollar negotiations added personal dimensions to the morning's crisis and created connections between family relationships and corporate success that extended beyond simple coincidence into meaningful intersection of individual capabilities and organizational needs. Marcus realized that his language skills had not only resolved immediate translation problems, but had also created communication bridge between Blackstone's daughter and the business negotiations that had been causing family stress and corporate uncertainty. The morning's intervention had addressed both professional crises and personal frustration through expertise that had been invisible until crises. demanded innovative solutions. The afternoon's revelations would continue building connections between personal relationships and professional opportunities, creating recognition that individual capabilities could serve multiple purposes when organizational flexibility allowed talent to emerge from unexpected sources and contribute to solutions that addressed both business needs and family concerns. Emma Blackstone's German fluency had been developed through daily conversations with her nanny, Maria Hoffmann, whose environmental activism and connections throughout Bavaria had provided insights into the cultural expectations and technical standards that Dr. Weber's delegation required for successful partnerships. The child had been attending German-language playgroups and cultural events that had exposed her to environmental advocacy and renewable energy discussions that directly related to her father's business negotiations, creating knowledge that could have informed corporate strategy if communication barriers hadn't prevented effective information sharing. Marcus's discovery of this connection revealed organizational opportunities that extended beyond immediate crisis resolution into systematic approaches for identifying and utilizing employee and family capabilities that could support business objectives while creating more inclusive and effective corporate culture. Emma has been asking if she could help with Daddy's work, Patricia continued. But we didn't realize she had specific information that could resolve the negotiation problems. Her German is actually better than most adult second language speakers because children learn differently, and her nanny has been very thorough in cultural education. The recognition that Blackstone's daughter possessed expertise relevant to billion-dollar negotiations challenged assumptions about age, capability, and the sources of information that could influence corporate decision-making. Children's perspectives and language abilities could provide insights that adult expertise might overlook or undervalue. Marcus understood that his morning intervention had created precedent for including family members and unconventional sources in problem-solving processes that could benefit from diverse perspectives and specialized knowledge that existed outside traditional corporate hierarchies and consulting relationships. The German contract success had generated interest from other international partners who required similar cultural sensitivity and technical expertise for renewable energy projects across multiple continents. Blackstone Industries was receiving inquiries from companies in France, Netherlands, and Denmark that had observed the German negotiations and wanted access to similar cultural and technical consulting services. Marcus's reputation had spread through international renewable energy networks with remarkable speed, creating opportunities for consulting work that could support his family's financial security while utilizing his engineering expertise and language capabilities for projects that aligned with his environmental values and professional interests. But the expanding opportunities also created complexity for someone whose primary focus remained Sofia's stability and development, rather than career advancement, that might compromise family obligations or require travel and schedule changes that could affect single-parenting responsibilities. The balance between professional opportunity and family priority would require careful negotiation as Marcus considered how to utilize his newly visible expertise while maintaining the stability that Sofia needed for her continued development and security. Jonathan Blackstone's appreciation for Marcus's contribution had evolved into genuine respect for someone who had demonstrated both technical competence and personal integrity in ways that impressed executives who were accustomed to evaluating talent and potential across diverse corporate environments. The afternoon conversation about Marcus's future role had developed into comprehensive discussion about organizational culture and talent utilization that could influence how Blackstone Industries approached employee development and international operations for years, beyond the immediate German contract success. We want to create a position that utilizes your expertise while respecting your family priorities, Blackstone had assured Marcus. International renewable energy consulting could provide significant income increase while allowing schedule flexibility that supports your parenting responsibilities. The offer represented recognition that valuable employees required accommodation of personal circumstances rather than simple expectation that career advancement would take priority over family obligations. Organizational flexibility could attract and retain talent that might otherwise be underutilized due to traditional employment assumptions. Marcus had requested time to consider the implications of career changes that could affect Sofia's routine and his ability to provide consistent care and attention that single parenting required. Professional opportunities needed evaluation in terms of family impact rather than simple financial or career advancement benefits. The German contract signing had created celebration throughout Blackstone Industries, as employees at every level recognized that the morning's crisis had generated success that would benefit organizational growth and employment security across multiple departments and operational areas. But for Marcus, the celebration was tempered by awareness that visibility and opportunity created complexity that required careful navigation to preserve the stability that had taken 18 months to establish for Sofia's benefit and security. The basement storage room had become Marcus's refuge for processing the day's events, and considering how morning crisis had transformed into afternoon opportunity that could reshape his family's future, while creating challenges that needed thoughtful evaluation and planning. Elena's photograph, tucked inside his supply cart, reminded Marcus that some decisions required courage that transcended practical calculations about security and stability. But courage also required wisdom about timing and readiness for changes that could affect more than individual circumstances. The day's transformation from invisible custodial worker to essential corporate contributor had demonstrated that expertise and opportunity could converge in unexpected ways. When crisis demanded innovative solutions and organizational flexibility allowed talent to emerge from unconventional sources. But the evening would bring Sofia's perspective on changes that could affect their carefully constructed life together, reminding Marcus that single parenting required consideration of two people's needs and preferences, rather than individual career ambitions or financial opportunities that might compromise family stability and relationships. Sofia's reaction to her father's transformation from night shift custodian to international renewable energy consultant revealed the wisdom that children often possess about changes that adults approach with unnecessary complexity and overthinking. At 5 years old, Sofia understood that her papa spoke many languages and knew about electricity and machines, so helping important people with those skills seemed perfectly natural rather than surprising or concerning. "Papa, did you help the business people understand the German words today?" Sofia asked during their evening routine of homework review and dinner preparation in their small apartment kitchen. Her question carried the straightforward curiosity that children bring to adult work situations, without the anxiety about status changes and professional identity that had been occupying Marcus's thoughts throughout the afternoon. Marcus explained the day's events in terms that a 5-year-old could understand, describing how sometimes adults need help communicating with other adults who speak different languages, and how his knowledge of German had helped solve problems for people at his workplace. Sofia's acceptance was immediate and complete, reflecting children's natural adaptability to changing circumstances when security and love remain constant. "Will you still pick me up from school every day?" Sofia's question addressed her primary concern about routine stability rather than career advancement or income changes that adults might prioritize. Her practical approach to evaluating change demonstrated the clarity that children often bring to complex situations that adults tend to overcomplicate with professional pride and financial calculations. Marcus assured Sofia that any job changes would maintain their daily routines and his availability for school pickup, bedtime stories, and weekend adventures that had become the foundation of their life together. His commitment to preserving their relationship dynamics provided the security that Sofia needed to embrace whatever opportunities might emerge from his newfound visibility and expertise. The evening telephone call from Jonathan Blackstone carried additional information about the German project's expansion and international opportunities that had developed throughout the afternoon as word spread through renewable energy networks about Blackstone Industries' successful cultural navigation and technical competence in European markets. "Marcus, we've received inquiries from renewable energy companies in 4 additional countries that want access to similar consulting services. This could become a permanent division within our organization, with you leading international cultural and technical consulting for sustainable energy projects." Blackstone's enthusiasm was evident in his voice, reflecting genuine excitement about business possibilities that extended far beyond the morning's crisis resolution. The opportunity represented career advancement that could provide financial security and professional satisfaction while utilizing Marcus's complete skill set, rather than limiting him to custodial duties that underutilized his education and capabilities. But accepting leadership responsibility would require careful consideration of time management and travel obligations that could affect his availability for Sofia's daily care and attention. Marcus requested additional details about schedule expectations and travel requirements before making commitments that could affect his family obligations. The conversation revealed Blackstone's willingness to accommodate single-parenting needs through flexible arrangements and schedule modifications that would support both professional effectiveness and family responsibility. "We understand that exceptional employees require accommodation of personal circumstances," Blackstone continued. "We're prepared to structure this position around your family needs while providing compensation that reflects your actual value to this organization." The German success has generated interest that could make this one of our most profitable consulting divisions. The following morning brought a meeting with Emma Blackstone and her German nanny, Maria Hoffmann, whose connections to Bavarian environmental groups had provided the cultural insights that Emma had been unable to communicate effectively until Marcus's translation abilities had created bridge between child's knowledge and adult decision-making processes. Emma's pride in contributing to her father's business success was evident in her careful explanation of conversations with Maria about German expectations for environmental commitment and community benefit that went beyond profit considerations into genuine stewardship and social responsibility. The child's understanding of complex concepts impressed Marcus with its depth and accuracy. Maria told me that German people want to make sure the electricity projects help the environment and the people who live there, not just make money for companies. Emma explained with the clarity that children often bring to concepts that adults discuss in unnecessarily complicated terms. Her summary captured essential elements of cultural differences that had been barriers for 18 months of professional negotiations. Maria Hoffmann's background in environmental activism and renewable energy advocacy had provided Emma with knowledge that directly applied to corporate negotiations, creating connections between family relationships and business strategies that demonstrated the value of inclusive approaches to problem-solving and information gathering. The conversation with Emma and Maria revealed organizational opportunities for systematic inclusion of family members and community connections in business planning and cultural assessment for international projects. Children's perspectives and immigrant insights could provide valuable information that traditional consulting services might overlook or undervalue. Marcus's role in facilitating communication between Emma's knowledge and corporate decision-making had created precedent for recognizing diverse sources of expertise and cultural understanding that could benefit business operations while creating more inclusive and effective organizational culture. The week following the German contract success brought validation of Marcus's consulting abilities through additional international inquiries and project opportunities that confirmed his expertise and cultural sensitivity were valuable assets for renewable energy companies seeking to expand into European and Latin American markets. The French Renewable Energy Consortium requested similar cultural consulting for solar installations in Provence that required navigation of environmental regulations and community engagement protocols that American companies had struggled to understand effectively. Marcus's ability to communicate in French and understand regulatory frameworks provided competitive advantage that generated immediate business interest. The Netherlands Wind Energy Partnership required technical expertise in grid integration and environmental impact assessment, areas where Marcus's engineering background and language capabilities could address both technical specifications and cultural expectations that had created barriers for previous American companies attempting European expansion. The consulting opportunities represented career transformation that could provide professional satisfaction and financial security, while contributing to renewable energy development that aligned with Marcus's environmental values and technical interests. But success also created expectations and responsibilities that required careful balance with single-parenting obligations. Sofia's adaptation to her father's changing work circumstances demonstrated remarkable resilience and maturity, as she began understanding that adults sometimes discovered new ways to use their knowledge and skills for helping other people and contributing to important projects that could benefit many families and communities. Papa, when you help the people make clean electricity, does that help other children too? Sofia's question revealed her developing understanding of environmental responsibility and social contribution that extended beyond individual family circumstances into broader community and global impact. Marcus explained renewable energy concepts in terms that Sofia could understand, describing how solar panels and wind turbines create electricity without pollution that could hurt the air or water that all families need for healthy living. Sofia's questions demonstrated curiosity about environmental science that reflected both her intelligence and her father's influence on her developing values. The apartment on Riverside Drive had become headquarters for Marcus's expanding consulting work, with technical documents and international correspondence sharing space with Sofia's homework and art projects in ways that demonstrated successful integration of professional advancement in family life. The income increase from consulting work provided financial stability that allowed Marcus to consider moving to a larger apartment with dedicated office space and Sofia's own bedroom, improvements that would support both his expanding business activities and her need for privacy and space as she continued growing and developing. But the apartment's familiarity and affordability had provided security during difficult months of establishing stability after Elena's death and Marcus's career adjustment. Moving represented opportunity for improvement while creating change that required careful consideration of Sofia's attachment to familiar surroundings and neighborhood connections. The decision about relocation would involve Sofia's preferences and comfort with change rather than simply adult calculations about professional image and business efficiency. Single parenting required prioritizing children's emotional needs, alongside practical considerations about optimal living situations and career advancement. Jonathan Blackstone's appreciation for Marcus's contribution had evolved into genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared values about family responsibility and environmental stewardship. Their professional relationship had developed personal dimensions that enriched both men's understanding of leadership, expertise, and the importance of recognizing talent regardless of conventional expectations or organizational hierarchies. The executive team's recognition of Marcus's capabilities had created organizational culture changes that influenced how Blackstone Industries approached employee evaluation and development across all departments and functional areas. The German success had demonstrated benefits of inclusive talent assessment and flexible problem-solving that could improve business outcomes while creating more equitable and effective workplace culture. Emma Blackstone's role in providing crucial information for business success had earned recognition that validated children's potential contributions to adult problem-solving and decision-making processes. Her example influenced organizational policies that encouraged family involvement and diverse perspectives in appropriate business contexts. The renewable energy consulting division that Marcus developed within Blackstone Industries became model for other companies seeking to expand international operations through cultural competence and technical expertise that addressed both business objectives and environmental responsibility. His success influenced industry approaches to talent utilization and cultural sensitivity in global markets. The German project's completion exceeded all performance expectations while establishing environmental standards and community engagement protocols that became templates for subsequent renewable energy installations throughout Bavaria and adjoining regions. Dr. Weber's partnership with Blackstone Industries generated additional projects that provided ongoing collaboration and business development opportunities. Sofia's kindergarten performance demonstrated academic excellence that reflected both her intelligence and the stability that Marcus's career transformation had provided for her continued development and educational opportunities. Her bilingual capabilities and cultural awareness positioned her for future academic and social success that honored both her Colombian heritage and American opportunities. The foundation that Marcus and Sofia established for supporting immigrant families facing career transitions and single parenting challenges became lasting legacy of their own experience with crisis, opportunity, and community support that had transformed individual circumstances into broader social contribution and service. Marcus's story influenced corporate policies and practices regarding talent recognition, family accommodation, and inclusive approaches to problem-solving that benefited organizations and employees across multiple industries and geographic regions. His example demonstrated that exceptional results often emerge when organizational flexibility allows talent to flourish, regardless of conventional expectations or traditional hierarchies. The evening routine in their new apartment maintained familiar elements of homework review, dinner preparation, and bedtime stories, while incorporating celebrations of daily accomplishments and planning for future opportunities that reflected both Marcus's professional growth and Sofia's continuing development as confident, capable young person. Elena's memory remained present in their daily lives through photographs, recipes, and values that guided Marcus's parenting and career decisions while inspiring Sofia's understanding of love, loss, and the resilience that allows families to honor the past while building positive futures that create meaning and contribution beyond individual circumstances. The transformation from invisible custodian to respected international consultant had required courage, capability, and timing that converged in ways that neither Marcus nor his employers could have anticipated when morning crisis demanded innovative solutions and organizational flexibility allowed hidden expertise to emerge and flourish. Sofia's wisdom about embracing change while maintaining essential relationships and values provided guidance that influenced Marcus's approach to balancing professional advancement with family responsibility, demonstrating that children often understand what matters most with clarity that adults sometimes lose in complexity and overthinking. The brass nameplate outside Marcus's new office read, Director, International Renewable Energy Consulting, in letters that represented recognition, opportunity, and the validation that expertise and contribution matter more than background, accent, or previous employment circumstances when organizations prioritize results and value human potential. The window view from Marcus's office encompassed the city skyline where Sofia attended school, played in neighborhood parks, and built friendships that reflected the multicultural community that had embraced their family during difficult transitions and celebrated their success when opportunity and preparation created transformation. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.